Good evening, everyone. This is Hal, the voice of the Open-Ended Poker Show, and tonight I am so excited. I have a amazing guest on with us. Her name is none other than Stefanie Ungar-Campbell. Now, does that? Hi, Stefanie. How,
Hi.
how are you?
Good, good. I'm looking forward to chatting with you tonight.
Well, we're excited to have you on, and if that last name doesn't ring a bell, I got to let everyone know you are the daughter of none other than Stu Unger, who literally in our world is God, number one, and is known as the greatest poker player that's ever lived. So I'm thrilled to have you on.
oh, thank you so much. I love the poker community and I love talking about my dad. So this is fun for me. So
That is so cool. So, I mean, first about you, Stephanie, what do you do? Are you in the poker world? Do you play?
no, so I'm not in the poker world really at all. I mean, up until the last like few weeks, I've kind of stayed a bit like hidden. Like I'll pop up here and there, like when there's, the World Series is going on, and I'll show up at the Rio and things like that. And it's always fun. It feels like a family reunion, seeing people you haven't seen for a year or two, and so that's fun. But no, what I currently do is I'm a producer. I'm a TV producer. So
Oh, great.
Vegas, yeah, and so I'm involved with that. I love doing that, and yeah, it's currently what I'm doing.
What's the name of your show? Let's give it a little plug.
So I'm working on two shows, but the one in Vegas that people locals would be familiar with is Vegas Around Town. That's the name.
Okay.
So it's a lifestyle TV show. So we highlight all the amazing people and things going on around the city. Business owners, realtors, just amazing people that are doing great things in the city, organizations, restaurants, cool things. So
That
yeah.
sounds so cool. And unfortunately, all the, especially the restaurants, I just feel
Oh
so
yeah.
terrible right now with what's going on. I actually have a lot of ties in the restaurant world in my real life, non-poker life. So
Oh
it,
really?
it's sad seeing what's going on out there, through this whole COVID mess. So that is really cool that you do a lot of focus stuff on those people.
Yeah, I just feel like I love my city, and if we know about a cool hot spot, and could share that, and just the amazing people in the city that make it what it is, so we highlight them.
That's phenomenal. I never knew you did that. So I'm
Yeah.
definitely going to follow you and check that stuff out too. Is there a website that our listeners can check that out?
Well, there's Vegas Around Town, Instagram, YouTube channel, website. Yeah, so they could. And on my page, on my Instagram page, I'm always posting about like all my production stuff and about my dad. I kind of combine like all things that make me me, which is my work life, which is that, and then my dad, and the I personally post a lot about like going out and eating at great places, because that is what I really do like to do. So
That
yeah,
is what I like to do. So I'm
yeah,
definitely going to follow that. That is
yeah,
so cool. That's great to know. And for our listeners, please check that out too. I'm sure we'll
yeah.
get some great
And I
info.
am working on another one that I'll share with you. You could have the insider, Vegas in style. So we're just starting that. So it's just going to be actually me and a girlfriend going around. So
Okay.
in Vegas Around Town, I'm behind the scenes. So this is a little more where I'll be in front going around to
Now
cool.
you're getting in front of the camera.
Yeah, so that's a little sneak peek of not many people know about that. So stay tuned for that. That's being developed currently, so that will be fun.
So we just had breaking news here at the Open-Ended Poker Show.
Yes, breaking news.
We heard it from Stefanie herself. That is really cool. So,
Yeah,
I mean, where do I start? Stefanie Unger, you're a child growing up, obviously. You grew up in Vegas, right?
I did. I grew up in Vegas until um halfway, like from about 6 to 14 I moved to Florida, but then moved back to
Oh,
Vegas.
okay.
Yeah. So but
So
I'm born here, yes, and yeah, so grew up kind of half and half here and then Florida, but primarily here.
we're in Florida.
Like Fort Lauderdale area.
Love that area. I lived
Yeah.
there for a while as well. So I got to ask you, you're 6 years old. You're
Yes.
in Vegas. When did you figure out that your dad actually, I remember bringing dad to school and saying what my dad did. Like, when did you figure out that dad gambles for a living?
Oh, I already knew before I was 6 years old. Like I mean, as early as I can remember, I remember being 4 and knowing, because I would see,
Wow.
um, he'd be playing backgammon at our house with like all these like big guys, that were, these what are considered now the legendary poker players and gamblers. And so I just grew up with this like my whole life. It was just the norm. I mean, I knew it was different though, because I knew my life didn't look like my friend's parents' life, So, but I did have an understanding of what he did, and I knew he was the top at what he did too. And so it was interesting, but it was all I ever knew.
But that was actually, I mean, like, poker's mainstream now. Let's face
Yeah.
it, poker's cool. Back then, I mean, it must have been a little awkward because people were probably like, "That's the daughter of that gambler," like,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they definitely, I do remember just even being picked up from like school, and I would see how like the staff would be, they knew like
right, the school
who
teachers.
yeah, like they knew. And so I definitely didn't have the typical like accountant as the father, or the chiropractor, like my best friend growing up and when I was little. So that I always did feel like, okay, that feels a little, I would feel a little like an outcast in a way, like, because at that age you want to fit in, you want to be like everybody else. But being that I did know he was talented, and I understood that he had this gift and this talent, like I was proud of that.
That is
So
so cool.
yeah, it was like this weird, thing.
And I'm sure, like, as a little kid, wherever you went, you were hooked up. You had the VIP treatment because of your dad.
Yeah, I mean, especially in those days in Vegas, like they comped for everything.
Right.
Now it's a little more corporate. It has to be approved. And like with
100%.
us back then, it was like you write out a slip and you're like, here, Stewie, go, you're here for dinner. Here you go. Like we never had to pay, although he would have, but like it just was what happened. They just
Right.
automatically, like from the poker room, they would write it out, and we would go eat or something, or wherever we would go. It was fun though. It was a good
No,
time.
at that young age, did Stu like sit down with you and say, Stefanie, this is not the norm? Or was there any conversation like that of like, I'm different, so to speak?
Well, yeah, I remember him saying, like most people would look at a gambler and be, or poker player and be like, that's, you're a degenerate, and like, and he would say, but I guess when you're good at it, you're no longer considered a degenerate anymore.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
so he would joke about it, like he knew, but he was a little bit out of the ordinary, where he, had some winning streaks.
Yeah. I think we've seen some of his winning streaks and heard about him. So on the other side, what was that like on your side on a winning streak? Like, we see it on TV, and of course we see hear the stories, and we learn much
Sure.
about your dad on how generous he was. I mean, he was amazing how generous
Yeah.
he was. But living there, what was that like? Do you remember any like super stories of he came home with X amount of money and he was just like having fun with it?
I mean, what comes to mind really is he would have wads of money in his pocket, like wrapped in a rubber band, and like it would always be in the side of his bed in his nightstand, and it would just be just money in there. Like he didn't use a bank account. So
You never had a bank account.
no, he was not. He was no, not at all. So he would actually like even hide money around the house, like in different places. So it wasn't just in, his drawer, something was to happen, So
Right.
and I'm sure at times I know he would forget that there would be certain stashes, and then he would find it, So
Definitely, like, during Easter, instead of the Easter egg, you're looking for the wad of money.
yeah, right. No. I know, it's hilarious. No, but like it's the truth. Like he just would, I think because he didn't have a bank account, he'd have to get creative. So
I mean, I kind of do that too, or most of us poker players do that because we have that emergency fund for when we have a
yeah.
bad night. But I think your dad's reasoning was much different.
Yeah, he was not the he didn't do the normal day-to-day stuff. Like he didn't know how to cook. He didn't, you know, he he just like that kind of stuff didn't come normal to him. He had a one-track mind, and since he was 12 years old, he's just always been a gambler.
Right.
He never had a real job his whole life. So those normal things that you grow into and you learn as you're becoming an adult, like I don't think he ever really learned because he was just always playing cards, and just out.
But people don't realize what a genius he was. And
Oh
I
yeah.
mean a true genius. I mean, when you were saying at 12 years old, what many people might not know, and correct me if I'm wrong, his focus was gin as his
Oh
first
yeah.
game, right?
Yeah, gin was his I even think until the day he died, gin was like his passion, his game.
Really?
Yeah, because he actually told me, he's like, he goes, honey, he goes, I mean, I'm a good poker player. He goes, maybe there will be someone that will be better than me one day. He's like, maybe, I doubt it, but he's like, maybe it's a possibility. And he goes, but I'll tell you one thing. He goes, there will never be a better Gin Rummy player than me. He goes, that I know for
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, that was his thing for
And
sure.
that was really where his bankroll started, if you will, right?
Yeah. So it started because he would be like 7, 8 years old watching his mother play. And he'd be just sitting with her as she's in like, social club or whatever it would be with her girlfriends playing.
Uh-huh.
And he would sit over her shoulder and he would watch her play, and he would watch the other women that she would play with like make fun of her because she was so horrible, like she was so bad at cards,
Uh-huh.
and he would start catching her mistakes. So that's
6
how
years old.
yeah, like 6, 7 years, like I would say probably more like 7, but yeah,
Okay.
like he started to catch her mistakes, and that's how he learned. Like it wasn't like somebody sat down with him and taught him, like he just picked it up by watching her.
I mean, he was a savant, if you will.
Yeah.
I mean, he was literally a genius. So, from there, from Gin Rummy, then he went to backgammon.
Well, no, from Gin Rummy, I don't know exactly what you know what happened was
What?
he from Gin Rummy, he went to Vegas, right? So he was in
Okay.
New York. So he grew up in New York, playing out there. He comes to Vegas still playing gin, and he's playing with all the big guys, like Chip Reese and
Mhm.
Danny Robinson and all those guys, right? And Billy Baxter, and they just quit playing him because they were like, this is just pointless. Like I'm not playing you anymore. Like he just would win and he would beat them, So then he was forced to have to learn how to play poker because that's what they all played. So if he wanted
Interesting.
to, yeah, if he wanted to, continue his providing for his livelihood, he
He
had
couldn't get
to.
any action the other way.
No, exactly. He couldn't get any action at all. So, um, yeah. So it was funny. So it was kind of like he fell into poker, and then he ends up creating a name for him as well in the poker world. So
Wow, wow. And I've heard, we've all heard the stories too of Doyle and Chip talking about him. And I know you were very close to all those too, all those players as well. And Mike Sexton, who just recently passed away, such a loss.
mhm.
So I know your dad was close to all of those guys, so
Yeah.
that right there, I mean, as a poker fan, poker player, that alone is something I think none of us can really relate to. Like you're at the dinner table hanging out with, Mike Sexton and Doyle Brunson and Chip Reese and all the true legends of really that got poker to what it is today.
Yeah. I mean, I would say I was the closest for sure with Mike Sexton.
Mhm.
For sure, even till like right days before he passed away, I was speaking with
Yeah.
him, or more so texting at that point. But But yeah, I mean, I remember seeing Doyle come to the house at times. My dad was very close with Chip. Chip was an amazing friend, amazing guy, very integrous, like true friend, really. And so was Mike, like for sure. Um, so I know, yeah, I've always seen those guys, maybe not like so much eating dinner, but like I would see them at my house, and I'm sure for the purpose of gambling and or whatever it would be.
Is there
So
something that sticks out in your mind? Like we all know how flamboyant, if you will, he was with money.
yes.
Is there like a funny story you can remember of, he came home and said, "Honey, let's do this," or something just crazy, with the money?
I just know, like, I mean, I have a few stories of like that would maybe be a little different. Like, so if we would come to Florida, like he would come to Florida and he would want to take me to Disneyland, all my friends would just drive to Disneyland, but he didn't have enough patience to sit in a car. So he'd be like, let's just take a half-hour flight and just jump on the, like, he wasn't, money wasn't an issue. Like as
Right.
far as like, but he was very like, like ADD. He had to always be in some, it was too much to sit still for too long. So, I mean, there was things like that. I mean, he would say, okay, let's go, if you want to go shopping, here's this much amount of money for like your school clothes. And I'd be like, oh, wow, like that's really nice. Mom doesn't give me that much. That's
Right.
cool.
Right.
Like, because they were divorced.
Right.
So it was like a total different life with my mom than my dad, so yeah. And like I said, like, and he'd always be like, give your friend, give her, if she's going to go shopping with you, give her $100, like he
Wow.
was
And
always,
$100 back then is a lot of money.
yeah, just randomly for just being my friend and being there to go shopping with. So he always was, he was very generous though, honestly. Like we would go to dinner and he would tip waiters and waitresses like so much money. And I would be like, I remember being that snotty little teenager girl and going like, Dad, why do you give so much money? Like, what's wrong with you? And he's like, honey, he's like, I actually respect these people more than some of the guys I sit next to at the poker table.
I
He goes,
love that.
yeah.
Really?
And he would just say, he's like, you don't know, like, if this is their second job, you don't know if they have 5, 6 kids at home and they're just working to support a family. And I was like, okay. And I remember it just really stuck with me. Like, I kind of felt like, oh, that was kind of snotty of me. But like, I learned a lot of life lessons from him,
Right.
from just watching the way he, how he treated people. And he was very empathetic and generous and kind.
I think that that's phenomenal. I actually didn't know that story. So that right there that's actually very touching. That is so cool. So cool that he was like that. So that is an amazing story. It's actually something I never read about. And to his compassion for real people, if you will, that's awesome. That is so good to hear.
Yeah.
Um, Growing up, was there a time in your life where you wanted to emulate that? Were you ever interested in like the gambling world, if you will, and wanting to play and make some money like that?
I had a brother. My brother was for sure, and he like idolized my dad, wanted to be just like him. But me, on the other hand, I wasn't so much like that. I do know. I remember a conversation. It was actually right before he passed away, and I was like, Dad, how do you know what you know? And he'd be like, I don't know. I just do. I can't explain it. And I was like, would you ever teach me, like if I wanted to know? And he's like, honey, he's like, I don't want you in this whole world. And I was like, why? And he's like, I don't feel like it's a good place for you. He's like, just the way that the guys talk at the poker table. He goes, I just don't want you into that. Now I know, I've heard that it's cleaned up and it's not how it used to be back
Right.
then. That's what I've been told. But it wasn't the case when he was telling me the story, so he wouldn't have known that now. But at that time he was like, yeah, I just don't want you around that. And I was like,
I was
okay.
wondering that. I was wondering if there was ever that father-daughter conversation of, honey, this is not something you want to get into.
Yeah, he did. And then it was like one of our last conversations that I had with him. And so after he passed away, I kind of just always stuck to not playing and not really learning, because I figured that was like my last way of just honoring and respecting him. So
Right.
I just really never learned, just out of just that reason alone. So yeah, but he did used to say that him and I were like alike, so alike to a T. So it does make me wonder, like, I'd be like, I'm like, it crosses my mind, like, would I have been good? Like, I don't know, so.
Right, right. I'm sure that goes through your mind. You're like, maybe I should try this out.
But I don't feel like I really would, because here's the thing. He had that whole mathematical genius thing going on. Like, he skipped
Right.
two grades growing up in school. Like, he was a true genius, had the genius IQ. I don't have that mathematical brain. Like, I'm very analytical, and I have always been able to, like, similar to my dad, read people really well. Like, as far as I could remember, since I was a little girl, I would like feel things and know things since I was as actually as far back as I could remember. So, but as far as the math whole skills and counting the odds and figuring counting the cards, like, that's not my thing.
Well, at least everything I've read about your dad too, it wasn't even the numbers per se. He just could read through a person's heart. He could read their soul, sitting at the table. And you always hear that line of play the player, not the cards. And I think, at
See,
least
maybe I don't even know that.
yeah, I think from what I've read, that emulates your dad. He
Yeah.
he really took advantage, if you will, of the people at the table at the appropriate times, and he had no fear.
No. And
He
he didn't have fear even in real life either. It's
Oh,
crazy. Like,
really?
that would carry over. Yeah. I actually just posted a story on my Instagram yesterday, because that's what I've been doing, is going on my Instagram page and just inviting people
I
just to
love that.
yeah, just to give a more well-rounded view of who my dad was, because I feel like so many people know him at the table, at the poker table, but they don't know the man that I knew, like
Right.
the man behind, like, the genius, like, you know what I mean, and that
Yeah.
I love so much. And that was one thing that I happened to share yesterday, is like, he never was intimidated around anybody. Like, and it used to actually make me a little nervous at times. And
You're
he'd
like, are we
say,
gonna get in trouble?
yeah. And he used to laugh, and he'd be like, thank God didn't make me like a big guy, and he made me this small guy, because he goes, I know I have the demeanor of a 6'2", 250-pound man. And he goes, I think I've been kept out of a lot of trouble because of my small frame. And I'm like, I agree,
And he shared that with you.
Oh yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, we were very,
That's
yeah.
so cool. And I don't want to bring up the dark side, if you will, so much.
No,
But it is part of the story of Stu.
no, I agree. It is.
And as amazing as he was, and some of the personal challenges that he had,
Yeah.
did he share with you some of those challenges? Did he talk you through those, some of the challenges, the personal dark side, if you will, of Stu?
Oh, absolutely.
He
He
did.
was always very transparent. He was always very honest with me.
Wow.
I knew everything, honestly. So I don't even pretend to even try to paint a picture of like him being this like saint or Disney character. Like, not at all. Like, I know the reality of his struggles and what he went through. And I also know how he would try to get, better, and to try to get clean, and all that. And I used to see those attempts, and then yeah, so we definitely would talk about it. I told him
Interesting.
one time, I was like, why don't you just move out of Vegas? Move out of Vegas and just come back for the World Series and just win it every year. And he laughed.
Right. And he could.
And he goes, oh my gosh, honey, if that was that easy. He's like, wow. And I mean, I was even shocked to hear him like say like, oh, that's kind of, it's hard work to even do that,
Sure.
But yeah, but I apparently thought he could. He was like,
Right.
superhero to me. But no, so I think Vegas, there was a lot, and the people that were around, and so it was hard to get away from that lifestyle with
Sure.
certain individuals around, and just people, just those maybe relationships you shouldn't, have in your life. And so So I'm sure everybody has gone through something in their life of
100%,
yeah,
100%. And that's why I don't want to dwell on it too much because listen, even as a fan, if you will, of your dad and reading so much about him, I the utmost respect and it's a life lesson, you know.
yeah,
I think I don't think there's a person that doesn't go through stuff and I'm sure you had a lot of takeaways from those challenges, you know.
yeah,
So you know, we can't change the past, you know,
yeah,
unfortunately, but certainly you're bringing a lot of life lessons from what you learned, you know,
yeah,
of those challenges. And you know, where I kind of want to finish with this, you've been so transparent lately. You kind of mentioned a little bit earlier in our conversation that you're starting to really talk about your dad, and I can see how, honestly, I can see how excited you are talking about your dad. So it's so cool to see that. What is there something that kind of triggered, you know what, I'm really going to start being more vocal and more transparent about it and talking the poker blogs and all that kind of stuff because you've been phenomenal.
oh, thank you. I feel like if I was to get to the end of my life, right, and I know my dad is a legend, and I go on to I'll Google things from time to time. Honestly, just because for me, it's almost in a sense therapeutic to like read
Yeah,
about him and to hear people like what they say about him, and it just keeps my memory of him alive. And so I've always done that. And so I just was thinking, I'm like, so many people know him at the poker table, but they
right,
don't really know the true man that I know him to be and love. And I mean, so much of who I am, he has shaped me, into who I am today. And I just feel like I would want to give an accurate portrayal of this man that everybody says is like this legend in the poker world, but doesn't, I feel like, have a full, true, just understanding of who he really, really was. And
right.
so I just feel like if I don't do it, nobody else will. And so I'm kind of just doing this as for that reason, really, So
Well, you're
to
doing a lot. You real no, you really are. And I'm listen, I'm sure it's difficult to talk about your dad too. You know, obviously when we talk about the dark side or anything like that, you know, you know, I lost my dad not too long ago, and it's tough whenever you talk about someone
yeah,
that you cared about and lost. But I think you're really doing what you just said. I think you're doing a service, honestly, to the poker community because as fans, as people who Google everything, like you were saying, you know, we all see what we see in print, but you're giving that personal, this is really what it was like. And just I mean, I'm sure you could go on for hours and time doesn't allow it, but just the few stories that you've shared with us tonight are amazing. You know, it gives us really the other side of Stu Unger, what Stu Unger was like at home, you know?
yeah. And I hope to like help some people too along the way with learning some of the things, and hearing about some of the things he's been through and that he even shared with me with his struggle. So I just, if it could help somebody or just even further on and honor his legacy, like I just feel like it's a win-win all the way around. And is it vulnerable at times? Sure. But I just
Sure.
feel like it's for a greater good. And so I think that's my motivation. So
Well, Stephanie, I want to have you on when you're releasing your book.
I'm actually trying to do a movie on his life.
Are you?
Yeah, that's what I really want to do because I'm in the producing world, obviously, and
Right.
I'm like, I just want to show this man of like what the child prodigy, the genius, like the whole story, like poker, all of it. And
The
like I
real
said,
story, not these other movies that have come out, you know, whatever, you know?
yeah, I mean that we had nothing to do with that movie, and
Correct.
yeah, and so it's like I want to produce something that I feel like is very accurate. Definitely not a Disney story, I know that,
Right.
but the real true Stu Unger, and there's just a lot I feel like I can share with the poker community and the world. I just feel like it's an amazing story that's just never been fully told. So
I
I hope to
love
do
that.
that. Yeah.
And we encourage you to do that. That story needs to be told. And I'm excited for you. I would love to see that out there. So I'm sure there's a
Thank
lot of
you.
work, and I know all the stuff that needs to go into that. So I
Yeah.
really, really wish you luck in that, because that story needs to be shared and coming
Yeah.
from you, you know, firsthand. So we're
Yeah.
excited. We're excited.
Thank
So
you. I appreciate that.
no, we're so excited. And again, Stephanie, I can't thank you enough for coming out here tonight and spending a few moments with us and sharing some of these stories. And, you're definitely invited to follow up. We'd love to have you back on another time as well to hear how this movie's coming, because I know you're going to do it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I would love to come back anytime. So I feel honored that you had me on, and I really enjoyed it. I love talking about my dad. I love the poker community. So anytime for sure. So.
Awesome. Well, Stephanie, again, thank you so much on behalf of the Open Ended Poker Show. I want to thank you, and we'll see you probably not too long. We'll see you in a few months, I bet, when that thing's under production. So that's it for tonight. This is Hal, the voice of the Open Ended Poker Show, signing off. We'll see you next week.
I think these videos are brilliant, and I'm sure you will like them too. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to click the notification bell.